Every night after we made love, she would kiss me passionately, sniff my neck down to my chest, and then rise from the bed without a word. Not casually, not sleepily. Her movements were deliberate, precise, almost ceremonial. I would lie there, frozen, as she circled the room, her bare feet silent against the wooden floor, eyes sweeping every corner, every shadow, as if they could hide secrets only she could see. The first time, I thought it was some quirky habit. One circle around the room, two. The third took forever. She paused near the fireplace, head tilted, listening to a silence that wasn't silent. Shadows stretched toward her fingers as she let them brush the air. The lamp flickered. The temperature dropped. My skin prickled, and for a moment, the room felt alive, watching, waiting. Her auburn hair fell like a curtain across her face, catching the lamplight, hiding her expression. Calm, methodical, hypnotic. Sometimes she stopped mid-step, staring at a corner so dark it didn't belong. A chill gripped my chest, making it hard to breathe. Time itself seemed to bend around her, each tick of the clock growing louder. Or maybe it didn't tick at all. One night I tried to speak. "Isabella, what are you doing?" Her eyes met mine briefly. Warmth returned, flickering, like a candle in a storm. Then she went back to her circles, fingers brushing the edges of rugs, walls, even the dresser drawers. 3 rotations, always 3. When she finally returned to bed, the air felt thicker, heavier, as if it had remembered every step she had taken and was keeping score. And the smell, her perfume, faint, floral, mixed with something metallic, coppery, almost like blood, lingered in corners she'd examined, though there was nothing there. I tried to rationalize it. An old floor, maybe a draft, my imagination, but the unease gnawed at me, spreading like ink in water. By the 5th night, I stopped questioning. I lay there, gripping the covers, listening to the soft tap, tap, tap of her steps, her measured breathing in rhythm with the circles. 1, 2, 3, always 3. And when she returned, curling against me, fingers tracing idle patterns across my skin, smiling as if nothing had happened, the room felt smaller, darker, suffocating, normal. That word felt meaningless. In those shadowed hours, I realized I wasn't sharing a bed with a woman I thought I knew. I was sharing it with someone else. Meticulous, calculating, terrifyingly aware. And slowly, the cracks began to show. Little quirks, strange coincidences, whispered patterns in the house, all connected to her circles. Isabella's walks weren't habits, they were warnings. But let me go back to the start, back to when I still believed I was marrying the most normal woman in the world. I've never been the type to believe in ghost stories or curses. My name is Vincent Torres. I'm an accountant, a man of rows and columns, not omens and whispers. Numbers never lie, unlike the horror movies my college friends used to force me to watch. In my mind, every creak in the night had an explanation. Old pipes, a draft, a house settling under its own weight. So when I met Isabella Reeves at a small coffee shop downtown, her simplicity felt like balm. She sat alone at a corner table, reading a paperback romance, sipping her latte with a kind of practiced stillness. The sunlight cut through the window and caught in her auburn hair like a halo, but there was something about the way she held herself, calm, composed, almost too composed, that tugged at me. "Excuse me," I said, my heart drumming in my chest. "Is that book any good?" She looked up and her smile felt disarming in its warmth. "It's awful," she laughed, snapping the book shut. "But sometimes awful is exactly what you need." That was Isabella, direct, charming without trying, a woman who seemed beautifully uncomplicated. We sat there for hours talking about everything and nothing. She told me she was a librarian, that she loved old movies, that she made lasagna so good it would ruin me for anyone else's. 6 months later, I was certain she was the one. Our wedding was small, intimate, perfect. She was radiant in her plain white dress, and when she said "I do," her voice didn't tremble once. My mind recorded every detail: the weight of her hand in mine, the scent of her perfume, the sound of our family's laughter echoing through the reception hall. Everything was beautifully, wonderfully ordinary. Until our wedding night, we had rented a rustic bed and breakfast tucked into the mountains. The room was charming, low wooden beams, a stone fireplace crackling softly in the corner. After dinner, we made love for the first time as husband and wife, and it was everything I had imagined: tender, passionate, perfect. And then Isabella did something strange. As I lay there catching my breath, she slid from the bed without a sound. Not lazily, not shyly. Her movements were deliberate, as though she'd been waiting for this moment. She began to walk, slow, measured steps along the room's perimeter. Her eyes flicked to each corner, every shadow, scanning like someone expecting to find something there. One circle, two circles, the third, then she slipped back under the covers as though nothing had happened. "What was that about?" I asked. "What was what?" "The walking around the room." "Just stretching my legs," she murmured against my chest, fingers tracing patterns across my skin. I let it slide. People had quirks. But as the nights went on, the ritual repeated. 3 slow, perfect circles, always scanning, always watching. And when she rushed, when she missed a corner, the next day something would break, or slip, or stop. Coincidence, I told myself. Bad luck. But somewhere in the quietest part of me, a voice whispered, "No, it's something else."
3 months into our marriage, I began keeping track. It sounds obsessive, I know, but I'm an accountant. Patterns stick out to me, and Isabella's ritual had stopped being a quirk. It had become a system. Tuesdays, she moved slower, pressing her fingers into the corners near the windows. Full moons brought an even stranger rhythm. She'd circle twice before her usual 3, and it was the nights something interrupted her that unsettled me most. The first time was a Thursday in October. We were tangled together on the living room couch when a neighbor's fire alarm shrieked through the walls. Isabella jerked upright, peered through the blinds, and stayed there until the noise stopped. Just burnt toast, nothing else. We went to bed without her finishing the ritual. I didn't think about it until the next morning when glass shattered in the kitchen. "Isabella," I called. She stood over our wedding photo, its frame splintered on the tile. "It just fell," she whispered, sweeping up the shards with quick, nervous hands. The counter was level, no drafts, no reason. That night, she insisted on intimacy again, then performed her circles with a frantic precision, 4 laps instead of 3, eyes flicking to corners she'd never checked before. November was worse. A snowstorm knocked out the power while we were eating dinner. Candlelight turned the apartment soft and eerie, and we ended up in the bedroom. But as she began her walk, a sudden gust blew out every candle at once, plunging us into a blackness so thick it felt alive. "Vincent," her voice was tiny. "I'm right here," I said, fumbling for the flashlight. By the time I found it, she was on the bed, covers up to her chin. She hadn't finished. At 3 a.m., we both woke to footsteps in the hallway, slow, deliberate, pacing back and forth outside our door. "Don't go out there," she whispered, clutching my arm. "Isabella, someone might be inside." No one's there. Trust me." I didn't. I grabbed the bat by the bed and flung the door open. The hall was empty, every window locked, every closet checked. Upstairs, our elderly neighbor's TV murmured faintly. He was asleep. "There's no one here," I said. "I know," she whispered, curled tight on the mattress. December convinced me I might be losing my mind. After a dinner with my parents, Isabella fell asleep in the car. She was so deeply out, I carried her straight to bed. For the first time since our wedding night, no ritual. At exactly 3:17 a.m., I woke to footsteps circling our bed, measured, heavy, not hers. The creak near the dresser, the thud by the window, the faint brush at the closet. I reached for Isabella. She was asleep, breathing steady, but the steps went on, vibrations shattering through the mattress. 1 circle, 2. I lay frozen. The third stopped at my side of the bed.
silence, and then breathing, slow, steady, and not hours. After the night of the breathing, I stopped pretending Isabella's ritual was harmless. I began researching in secret. Late at night while she slept, I scoured the internet for answers. OCD patterns, sleep disorders, shared hallucinations, anything to explain what was happening. But the deeper I went, the more I found terms I didn't want to see. Protection circles, ward walking, boundary maintenance. Words that described exactly what Isabella did every night. And Isabella herself was changing. Her eyes flicked to corners when she thought I wasn't looking. She paused at doorways, listening for something only she could hear. Sometimes her lips moved silently, like she was reciting prayers. One Saturday morning over breakfast, I finally asked, the walking, after what's it really for? She froze mid-bite, fork hovering. For a moment, she just stared at me, weighing something. Then quietly, you wouldn't understand. Try me. She set the fork down. My grandmother taught me, before she died. Taught you what? How to keep them away. A cold weight settled in my stomach. Keep who away? The ones who watch. The ones who want what we have. I searched her face. She wasn't joking. Isabella, I think you should talk to someone. You think I'm crazy? She said flatly. I think you're anxious. There are treatments, therapy. Last Tuesday, when the power went out and I couldn't finish, you heard the footsteps. My mouth dried up. And Friday night, when I fell asleep, you felt them walking around the bed. She was unconscious. How did she know? They've always been here, Vincent. But when two people come together, physically, in love, it creates something bright, something they want to touch, to taste, to steal. She moved to the window, staring out at our quiet street. The ritual keeps them back. As long as I walk, as long as I check the corners, they can't get close enough to hurt us. I joined her, my hands on her trembling shoulders. And if you don't, they get closer, she murmured. Each time I fail, they get closer to what they want. Which is what? Our connection, our love. She turned to me, eyes wide and unblinking. Once they feed, there's nothing left. Later, I called my sister Rachel, a psychiatric nurse. She said it sounded like severe anxiety with obsessive-compulsive features. You're under stress too, she added. Hypervigilance makes normal things seem threatening. It all made sense. Until that night, Isabella walked 5 circles instead of 3. And as she moved, I swore I heard something pacing just behind her, slightly out of sync, like an echo trying to catch up. When she returned to bed, I heard whispers fading into the walls. Isabella, I asked softly, what happens if you stop? Silence, then barely audible. My grandmother never told me. Some barriers, once broken, can never be rebuilt. I asked if she'd ever been tempted to find out. She turned to me in the dark. Have you ever been tempted to jump off a cliff? 2 weeks later, exhaustion made the choice for us. By Friday night, Isabella was wrecked from double shifts at the library. Dark circles under her eyes, moving like she was underwater. Over takeout, I suggested we sleep early. She shook her head with a faint smile. I've missed you all week. I worried about her. The rituals were longer now, sometimes half an hour. But when she reached for my hand, I didn't resist. Our lovemaking was gentle, almost drowsy. She melted against me, then tried to stand. Her knees buckled. Easy, I said, catching her. I have to, she murmured, eyes already closing. You're exhausted. Just lie down. She fought it for a second, then slumped into the bed, asleep before finishing the ritual. Part of me was relieved. Maybe this would prove her fears were in her head. But as midnight neared, the apartment felt wrong. Shadows deeper, silence heavier, like a room holding its breath. At 2:47 a.m., I got up for water. While at the sink, I heard it. Footsteps, not one set, several, light, synchronized, moving through our apartment and Isabella's ritual pattern. She was still asleep. I crept toward the bedroom. The footsteps made 1 circle, 2. My heart hammered as I reached the doorway. They stopped. Then came the breathing, not from the bedroom, from behind me. I spun around. 3 shapes stood in the hallway.
Not solid, but human enough to make my skin crawl. They shifted like smoke, but held their forms, watching me with something like curiosity. One tilted its head, then, in perfect unison, they moved toward the bedroom. I followed, frozen. They arranged themselves around the bed, one at the foot, one on each side. The one nearest to me reached for Isabella's face. Its hand stopped short, as if hitting an invisible wall. The air shimmered. It pulled back, frustrated. Even without her ritual, something still protected her, weakened, but there. I must have made a sound because all three turned toward me. The one closest leaned down, its face near my ear. It whispered, "She forgot." The world went black. I woke to sunlight and Isabella shaking me. "Vincent, you're on the floor." My head pounded. Dream? Breakdown? But then I saw them, muddy footprints circling the bed. Not ours. Isabella stared at the marks, her face pale. "They're getting stronger," she whispered. "The ritual isn't enough anymore. They're learning." A faint scratching started inside the walls. "What do we do?" I asked. She reached for her phone, hands trembling. "I call my grandmother's sister, the one I wasn't supposed to contact unless," she swallowed, "unless they got too close." The scratching grew louder. "This is only the beginning," she said, eyes locked on mine. "What do you think is happening to Isabella? Who are the figures circling the bed? Spirits? Echoes? Or something worse? And what happens when the rituals stop working completely? If you were Vincent, would you stay to help her? Or run before they notice you too? Part 2 is coming soon. Like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss what's waiting in the dark.